wait, what do we got here? Auto fail. Oh, hey. Look at this. We actually have a failure. And yeah. Did he not set things correctly? Okay, so first thing, any pressurization system failure. First thing is, let's level the airplane before we get any higher. So there we go. So we got 250. It's going to level off. Give me a second. We're going to pull out my 737 QRH because, yeah, we just had a failure. Huh. There we go. Okay, so QRH. I'm going to search through it here for auto fail. I'm going to get probably pressurization auto fail under, no, auto fail 2.2. Let's see if that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. Cabin altitude warnings. Okay, so auto fail or unscheduled pressurization change 2.2. Auto fail or unscheduled pressurization change auto fail may or may not be illuminated. Condition, one or more of these occur. Automatic pressurization mode has failed. The cabin altitude is not controllable. And one thing I did note here, actually, I had a quick look. It looks like our cabin altitude is way up. No, sorry, our cabin altitude is down at 0. Our differential is approaching the max, so we obviously have a problem here. So objective is to maintain control of cabin altitude. Increasing thrust may ensure sufficient air supply to control the cabin altitude. Our cabin altitude is too low, actually. We have a too much differential, so we don't need to increase thrust. Auto fail or unscheduled pressurization change. One at a time. Engine bleed switches both. Verify on. So we do have on and on. Yep. One at a time. Allow cabin rate to stabilize before placing second switch to auto. Pack switches, both verify auto. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that is in the auto position, and that's in the auto position. Choose one. Auto fail light is extinguished and cabin altitude is controllable. Nope. Auto fail light is illuminated or cabin altitude is not controllable. So auto fail light is illuminated. Pressurization mode selector to alternate. Pressurization mode selector to alternate. Go to step 5. Choose one. Auto fail light is extinguished and cabin altitude is controllable. It does not appear that the cabin is climbing. So auto fail light is illuminated or cabin altitude is not controllable. Go to step 6. Pressurization mode selector to manual. Manual. That definitely did something. Outflow valve switch. Adjust as needed to maintain correct cabin altitude and rate of change. Alright, so cabin outflow switch. Let's see if we can open it here. Because we have too much pressure in the cabin. Aha! And we have had an impact. Our differential's going down, our cabin is climbing. This is a really awkward angle for me to work at here, so let me just switch views here. There, it's a little better anyways. Alright, so now our cabin is climbing way too quickly there, so we definitely... It works. Cabin altitude is controllable. We are going to have to really watch this, though. This is going to be a pain in the butt today, to say the least. Because it takes a little while for adjustments to the outflow valve to have an impact on what the airplane's doing, but it looks like it's working. Alright, so cabin altitude is controllable. Go to step 13. Checklist complete, accept deferred items. Deferred items. Descent checklist, pressurization, adjust outflow valve switch as needed to maintain correct cabin altitude and cabin rate of change. Recall checked, auto brake, landing, data, and approach briefing. Alright, so approach checklist, altimeters at pattern altitude, outflow valve switch. So we've got a special checklist now we've got to do. We're going to close this a little bit more. So we can resume our flight. Or we can continue our flight. We're just going to have to manually manage the pressurization system, which is a royal pain in the butt. But hey, that's kind of fun. We actually had a failure. So We did manage to solve the problem, so we're going to resume our climb now. Push the altitude intervention, that'll get it back going into climb mode here, up to 340, and there we go. So, yeah, interesting. I have not had a service-based failure in the 737, I think, yet, other than just running out of hydraulic fluid periodically and having to refill it before we take off. So that's kind of neat. That is really neat, actually. I wasn't expecting that, but it seems like the situation's been dealt with. We're going to have to monitor it closely. It's not going to be particularly comfortable with passengers because of the pressure changes. It's kind of hard to manage these pressure changes. Nobody likes 1,000 foot per minute climb, so we're going to try and just change that valve in little spurts, and our target is about a 500 foot per minute climb for now. What we're also going to have to do then is every time the power changes, that's also going to change the bleed air going into the cabin, which is going to mean we're going to have to change that outflow valve again to adjust it. So we're going to be monitoring that constantly throughout the flight, which is going to be a pain in the butt, at least until we stabilize and cruise. So now that we've got the failure taken care of, we're going to do what's called the ABCs, which is ATC, backend, and company. Those are the three people you need to let know about any time you have a problem that forms in an airplane. ATC, backend, and company. ATC, we don't need to inform in this case. So for this particular failure, and this, by the way, guy, you should have turned these off after takeoff. So for ATC, this is a failure that is not going to affect us in any way, shape, or form at this point. We had a pressurization issue. Before we leveled off, we should have notified ATC if ATC was online, but other than that, we haven't needed any interference from ATC, and we won't need any special handling. It looks like we can continue normally, so we don't need to notify ATC anything anymore. Back end. I would not tell the passengers if we had a small issue like this. It shouldn't be impacting any. It's not impacting our operation. People just get worried when they think the airplane's broken, so better not to tell people. But the back end is two parts: it's the cabin crew and the flight and the passengers. So the cabin crew, I probably would let them know that there's a pressurization issue. It's we are able to manage the situation, but if there are any problems with the if they notice any problems with the pressurization, or it's possible that we could have a rapid descent at any point in time, just to be ready for that, just so a little bit of awareness on their part of things to be watching out for. And then company, we do need to let company know. It's not an urgent situation, but before the airplane can now return from Orlando, someone's going to have to examine why this broke and potentially either fix it or defer it. So, cabin altitude. Now I let the cabin altitude get too high. Humbug, see? Close that valve. See, I'm not monitoring this very carefully. See, the cabin altitude got to about just about 10,000 feet. So now I got to get it back down just a smidge. And that's the thing, is we're going to be sitting there playing with this switch now, managing this system automatically here. Now, our flight altitude today, this is not correct, so I don't know if this has an impact in manual mode, and I don't think it's going to, but I'm going to set it anyways. So we would let company know. So we would probably either get a hold of them on the radio, but more likely what we would do is use the ACAR system to send them a message, say, cabin pressurization auto fail, alternate failed as well, manual mode working okay, and ask them what they want to do. Okay, wow, I've closed that valve way too far now, but now look at this cabin altitude, it's just sinking like a rock. The differential's rising, the cabin dropped 4,000 feet. Everybody's ears in the back would be absolutely popping right now. What a horrible job I'm doing trying to manage the system here. Well, the trouble is that the cabin rate is kind of what I'm looking for, but it takes a minute for it to stabilize after every adjustment. So I'm kind of trying to do it in little fits here. Trying not to overcompensate, and I obviously way overcompensated when I got that cabin altitude alert and dropped the cabin altitude back down to 6,000 feet from 10,000 in a matter of a minute, so that would have made people very uncomfortable. Probably a lot of people are complaining to the stewardess right now that their ears have popped 3 times. So we'll have to monitor this. This is going to be a pain in the butt because we're going to have to monitor it the whole time. This is the first one that's actually required me to pull up the QRH and actually contemplate whether continuing this flight is a good idea. And that's something else that you would discuss with company over ACARS. Do you want to continue? Do you want to go back? Depending on how far out of the departure point you are, and all sorts of other considerations. There's tons of considerations, obviously, that go into that decision. At the end of the day, the captain has the final authority. If he says he wants to go back, then no one can really argue with that. But it's more a collaborative decision in most cases. What are the impacts of this failure? So is this something that can be repaired in Orlando? Is this something that we can fly safely with for 2.5 hours still? I would say, yeah, once we get stabilized in cruise, as long as we don't make a lot of altitude changes, we'll be okay. We'll have to manage it in the descent again, but it's not a big deal. We can definitely do it. But again, is there maintenance available in Orlando? If there's no maintenance available, or if there's no parts available, then it may be difficult. Another consideration is, can it be deferred if it can't be fixed at the time, depending on the nature of the fault? If there's no spare parts there, can it be fixed? Checked. And, can it be fixed or can it be deferred, and is there a different way to run the system? Since the alternate system also failed, I'm going to say that probably it would not be deferrable, and they probably have to fix it. So does this impact the flight schedule down the road too? There's supposed to be a return flight from Orlando. That's obviously going to be delayed, if not canceled potentially. Would it be better for us to go back to Toronto, where we have a maintenance base, and maybe they have a spare airplane that they can put these people onto if you're not too far out of Toronto? So these are the things that the company would have to consider and help make a decision what is most appropriate for the operation. So there we go. Who knew? I didn't. That's part of the fun, and that's why I just love this live stream. It's just figuring this stuff out. So company would probably come back. I don't know what they would say, to be honest. Once an airplane's airborne, there's a lot of incentive to keep it going to its destination because it's more convenient for the passengers. If we were to go back to Toronto right now, what an inconvenience that would be for the passengers. So, you want to keep people kind of happy, but at the same time, once this airplane gets to Orlando, it's broken. Mechanics have to come and fix it. There's a good chance the next flight is going to be delayed or canceled. So, and if there's no maintenance, or if there is maintenance, but it might be contract maintenance, it might be very expensive for this company to get the airplane fixed in Orlando. That's also a consideration. It's not just will the, is it possible to do it, but also how much is it going to cost the company versus sending this airplane back. This whole flight was wasted. Any expense on this flight was wasted, but they have another spare airplane hopefully to put on this flight with a delay. And there's all sorts of things you have to think about. Like the flight crew as well has a limited duty day. Will they have enough time now to go to another airplane, start it up, load all the passengers, take off, and go down to Florida and come back if that was their plan in the day that remains, or is it going to be too tight now and they might need to find a new crew to go and fly the next flight, to go fly the replacement flight, because this crew now will have used up enough of their day that they can't finish the whole flight in a day. So tons and tons of considerations that would go into a decision of whether to turn back or whether to continue. Safety obviously is paramount, and that's number one, and if there's any question about safety, you would go back without a doubt. But then once you conclude that it is possible to safely continue the flight, then there become a whole bunch of logistical questions that you have to answer, and that's more the company's job. That's the dispatcher and the operational control manager's jobs to figure out what's the best way to tackle this problem, what's the best way to solve this problem. Can we continue? Is there a way to fix the airplane down there? What's the likelihood? Without, they may ask you some questions to try and sort of diagnose the problem and see what the likely scope of the repair is. I would say because the auto system and the alternate system both failed, and because we're in manual mode, I would say that this would be a very difficult, this would not be a quick and easy repair. Some repairs are really quick and easy. Them maybe just a system reset, and maybe that's all it would take is a reset, reboot the computer when we get there. But that's a risk you have to take too, because if it's not that, and you have to start getting some parts and taking apart part of the airplane, you're looking at a couple of hours of downtime, potentially some mechanics that don't work for WestJet but work for some other airline or company based in Orlando that would have to fix this airplane. Would cost the company a pretty penny. Hoy. And I'm curious, do we have an MEL? Does PMDG have an MEL list for this airplane? I'm not sure that they do. I don't think they do. But yeah, that's something you would have to look. But you know what? The internet is a wonderful resource. Let me just see what I can find here. look what I found. Didn't take me very long. The master minimum equipment list for the Boeing 737 series all the way up through the 900 series. So what is deferrable? And 21 is air conditioning, so we'd skip right to 21. This is just changes. Okay, here we are, 21. Usually the bigger systems, the overarching systems, are the first ones in this under here. So 21 air conditioning packs. Air conditioning packs, air conditioning packs. And maybe pressurization's in here, maybe it's not. Yeah, cabin rate of climb indicator, yeah. Pack turbofans. Rate of climb indicator, cabin altitude warning system, cabin indicator. Cabin altitude indicator, pressure indicator, cabin pressure indicator. Cabin pressure control system, analog control system. So nope, not these ones because we're not the 500, we're the 800. So cabin pressure control system, digital control system, automatic modes. Number installed 2. So there's the automatic and there's the alternate system. 1 number required for dispatch 1. So one of them has to work. 1 may be an operative provided manual mode operates normally. Inoperative controller is deactivated. And auxiliary fuel bleed air pressurization system is, if installed, is verified to be operational prior to departure. So there's a couple of different contingencies. We could do that, or we could do this one here prior to incorporation of these service bulletins, depending on what series you have. So then there's also usually different versions, different MELs you can apply depending on the systems you have and how much equipment you have left. So number installed 2, number required for dispatch 1, and these are the conditions. Or you could skip down to digital system 2 installed, 0 required, maybe an operative for unpressurized flight. So provided procedures established and used to ensure lower forward cargo compartment remains empty. So there's a whole bunch of conditions here if you want to do an unpressurized flight. So if you want to do a pressurized flight, you have to have one of them working. If neither of them work, you could fly it, but it would have to be unpressurized. So there's different possibilities here, but the fact that both the auto and the alternate system failed make me think that they're not going to work, and unpressurized flight would be the only possibility. So deferring the system is probably not going to happen for flights from Orlando to Toronto. You're not going to be flying at 10,000 feet. So yeah, I would say, you know, looking ahead as a captain and sort of talking to the company, I would say, yeah, deferring it's probably not going to be an option. It's going to have to be fixed before the airplane can be flown again with passengers on board. So do we think it's going to be fixable in Orlando? The nice thing about a 737 is there are thousands of them operating out there, thousands of maintenance bases, and thousands of parts departments out there. So chances are probably WestJet can get some parts pretty easily down to Orlando. If they're not there, they can probably get them shipped down there pretty quickly from somewhere closer than maybe WestJet's base. So fixing it is probably a lot easier. Depends on the aircraft type. Some aircraft types, there may not be as many parts in stock, but 737s are ubiquitous. They're everywhere, so getting the parts may not be such an issue, and there's probably a lot of mechanics all over the place that are experienced with different parts of 737. So yeah, I would say that continuing the flight's probably the best option, especially now that we've gone as far as we have. But boy, would it be a pain in the butt for the company now. Now they're going to have to take this airplane offline when we get to Orlando, possibly cancel the return flight and find somebody to fix it, or at least delay the return flight by several hours while somebody fixes the system. Possibly just replaces that digital computer. Oh, good times. Glad that's not me trying to get back from Orlando today. Wow.